Good day, everybody. Welcome to the Bible in a Year, 2021. We are on day 266, and we are reading through Esther, chapters 1 to 5. Okay, we've got a lot to cover, and I apologize already for the length of this. So we're just going to jump into this. Esther is really important because Esther reveals to us how insignificant and even significant, singular significant events can add up into the Lord moving his agenda forward. And I'm going to say from the beginning here that there are those who believe that the king that is referred to here is actually Artaxerxes, that we've been reading about as well. And if that's the case, there's a number of questions that come to mind, and there's other answers that are given if this is what the account that we're actually reading here. So let's understand the timeline and the context here. So in verses 3 to 4 of chapter 1, in the third year of his rule, he hosted a feast for all his officials and courtiers. The leaders of Persia and Media attended, along with his provincial officials and officers. He showed off the awesome riches of his kingdom and beautiful treasures as mirrors of how very great he was. The event lasted a long time, 6 whole months to be exact. That is quite the party. So in verse 5, after that, the king held a 7-day feast for everyone in the fortified part of Susa, where they were important people in the town or not. They all met in the walled garden of the royal palace. Okay, so everybody was there, every walk of life. Verse 10 to 12. On the 7th day, when wine had put the king in high spirits, he gave an order to Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagatha, Zethar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who served King Ahasuerus personally. They were to bring Queen Vashti before him wearing the royal crown. She was gorgeous, and he wanted to show off her beauty both to the general public and to his important guests. But Queen Vashti refused to come as the king had ordered through the eunuchs. The king was furious, his anger boiling inside. So this is a big scandal now. He's all upset. So he's going to call his wise men together and ask for advice in this case. So in verses 16 to 18, and understand this is all the context for the book of Esther here. Then Memucan spoke up in front of the king and the officials. Queen Vashti, he said, has done something wrong, not just to the king himself. She has also done wrong to all the officials and the peoples in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. This is the reason. News of what the queen did will reach all women, making them look down on their husbands. They will say, King Ahasuerus ordered servants to bring Queen Vashti before him, but she refused to come. This very day, the important women of Persia and Media who hear about the queen will tell the royal officials the same thing. There will be no end of put downs and arguments. Wow, that really wouldn't fly in today's age, would it? Nor should it. Wasn't the best of times for women in history, that's for sure. So this is the context now. He's going to get rid of Queen Vashti, and then he's going to wake up one morning and realize how much he misses her. So he sends out this order. Now, if the king wishes, let him send out a royal order and have it written into the laws of Persia, Media, laws no one can ever change. It should say that Vashti will never again come before King Ahasuerus. It should also say that the king will give her royal place to someone better than she. So yeah, he was drunk when he did this. Now he is just plain mad. He's going to do this under this advice, which is rash advice, self-centered advice. And he's going to wake up one morning and realize how lonely he is. And that's what we read here in chapter 2, verses 1 to 2. Sometime later, when King Ahasuerus was less angry, he remembered Vashti, what she had done and what he had decided about her. So his young male servant said, "Let the king have a search made for beautiful young women who haven't yet married." So there we have the background of everything that is taking place. And then we get introduced to Mordecai. And this is really a story about Mordecai. Esther's the instrument. Esther's the one who's going to open the door, but everything really is because of Mordecai. Esther is incredible in her submission and in her obedience and in her bravery, without a doubt. But it's Mordecai who had the insight, who had the wisdom, who gave direction. So this is really Mordecai's story. Now there was a Jew in the fortified part of Susa whose name was Mordecai, Jair's son. He came from the family line of Shimi and Kish. He was a Benjamite. Those despicable Benjamites. So Mordecai had been a father to Hadassah. Hadassah. Is that a name that comes to mind? No, because we always refer to her as Esther, but her name's Hadassah. Though she was really his cousin because she had neither father nor mother. The girl had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. When her parents died, Mordecai had taken her to be his daughter. So even there, with Mordecai, her cousin, she found favor. And that's the interesting thing about Esther here, is that the Lord's favor is upon her so that she ends up receiving favor from everybody she encounters. Yes, she's beautiful. She has a fine form to look at. You can tell that she just has the sweetest nature about her, but this is still about the Lord's favor resting upon her. The young woman pleased him and won his kindness. He quickly began her beauty treatment. So she's been taken. This is the one that now is going to prepare her for the king. So he quickly began her beauty treatments and gave her carefully chosen foods. He also gave her 7 servants selected from among the palace servants and moved her and her servants into the nicest rooms in the women's house. And then we read again in verse 15. Soon the moment came for Esther, daughter of Mordecai's uncle Abihail, whom Mordecai had taken as his own daughter, to go to the king. But she asked for nothing except what Hegai, the king's eunuch in charge of the women, told her. Esther kept winning the favor of everyone who saw her. Now let's just call it what it is, okay? These young ladies, these young virgins, did not come by choice. It wasn't like there was a bachelor contest type of thing that was run, and these were all contestants in that. This was, the army went through and they pulled out any young women that they thought would please the king. And then the king had all this, like months every night, raping a different woman. And I call it rape because they had no choice. If they didn't obey, they would have been killed. So what do you call that? That's what it is. That's the time in which they were living. So this is not an easy thing for her. This man is about to force sex on her. If he's not pleased with her, then she will just join a large group of women who will never see really the light of day again, who will never see a man again, and that is their life, locked away as a concubine. They will never see the king again, unless for some reason he remembers their name. But I think it would all be a blur after a while. And yeah, that's what she was facing. But this is Esther, and the favor of the Lord is upon her. Verse 17, the king loved Esther more than all the other women. She had won his love and his favor more than all the others. He placed the royal crown on her head and made her ruler in place of Vashti. So she wasn't a concubine, she became his wife. And still we see, look at the character of Esther here in verses 19 to 20. She's the queen, but she's still submitting to the head of her family. When they gathered the young women to the second women's house, Mordecai was working for the king at the king's gate. Esther still wasn't telling anyone her family background and race, just as Mordecai had ordered her. She continued to do what Mordecai said, just as she did when she was in his care. Now understand, we're given all kinds of little details of things that seem not connected at all, and yet become things that are very, very significant. These are foundation things. So in verse 22, when Mordecai got wind of it, so there was this plot that Mordecai found out about. He informed the king. They did an investigation, found out it was a plot to kill the king, and those two people were executed. So when Mordecai got wind of it, he reported it to Queen Esther. She spoke to the king about it, saying the information came from Mordecai. And that will come in. That will come in at a very significant moment. And when it does, that's when the tables will turn. That will mean everything will change from what we're reading here today. In chapter 3, verses 1 to 2, now we're going to have a catalyst for all kinds of problems that are going to happen here. Sometime later, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, Hadassah, the Agag's son, by promoting him above all the officials who worked with him. All the royal workers at the king's gate would kneel and bow face down to Haman because the king had so ordered. But Mordecai didn't kneel or bow down. And this is going to cause so much trouble, almost the annihilation of the Jews from Babylon. Verse 8 to 9. Now, we can refer this as the Lord using this as an excuse, or this was the call, or this was the instrument for what he wants to bring about. So then Haman said to King Ahasuerus, a certain group of people exist in pockets among the other peoples in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from those of everyone else, and they refuse to obey the king's laws. That's not the truth. It's half truths, and we see them all the time in our days, in the media and from politicians and everything else. Half truths. There's no good reason for the king to put up with them any longer. If the king wishes, let a written order be sent out to destroy them, and I will hand over 10,000 kikars of silver to those in charge of the king's business. The silver can go into the king's treasuries. So basically, he's going to pay for this law. That's how much he hates the Jews, and this is going to be the instrument of blessing, believe it or not. And then this is so out of character for Babylon. This is what we read, verse 15. Driven by the king's order, the runners left Susa just as the law became public in the fortified part of Susa. While the king and Haman sat down to have a drink, the city of Susa was in total shock. Then in chapter 4, verse 1, we get the reactions. Mordecai is just an example of the reactions that are going on. When Mordecai learned what had been done, he tore his clothes, dressed in mourning clothes, and put ashes on his head. Then he went out into the heart of the city and cried out loudly and bitterly. He wants to make sure that all the attention is going to come to this. And then we find that Esther is put in this dilemma situation. Mordecai, is telling her she needs to go and tell the king. And Esther says, but I have this problem. I can't go unless the king sends for me. So if I go without the king sending, well, she explains it here. All the king's officials and the people in his provinces know that there's a single law in a case like this. Any man or woman who comes to the king in the inner courtyard without being called is to be put to death. Only the person to whom the king holds out the gold scepter may live. In my case, I haven't been called to come to the king for the past 30 days. And then Mordecai tells her this, verses 13 and 14. Don't think for 1 minute that unlike all the other Jews, you'll come out of this alive simply because you are in the palace. In fact, if you don't speak up at this very important time, relief and rescue will appear for the Jews from another place, but you and your family will die. But who knows? Maybe it was for a moment like this that you came to be part of the royal family. Yeah, Mordecai, I don't know if you call it philosophizing, but he's just reflecting here, and he's drawing upon everything that he knows from scripture and from the word that has been passed down, the oral accounts, and he comes to this conclusion. So Esther turns out says, fine, okay, it's time for a prayer meeting. Go gather all the Jews who are in Susa and tell them to give up eating to help me be brave. They aren't to eat or drink anything for 3 whole days, and I myself will do the same along with my female servants. Then, even though it's against the law, I will go to the king, and if I am to die, then die I will. But notice she doesn't ask that they pray for her success, but that she will be brave. Interesting. We find out that prayers are answered. Chapter 5, verse 2, when the king noticed Queen Esther standing in the entry court, he was pleased. The king held out to Esther the gold scepter in his hand, and she came forward and touched the scepter's tip. Okay, that was so important. I put it there twice for you. Now, here we are in chapter 5, verse 11 to 13. And what's incredible is that Haman thinks everything is going just well for him. He's about to wipe out his enemy. It's just fantastic. And he has no idea. He can't see his doom is at hand. Haman boasted to them about his great wealth and his many sons. He told all about how the king had honored him by promoting him over the officials and high royal workers. Best of all, Haman said, Queen Esther has invited no one else but me to join the king for food and drinks that she has prepared. In fact, I've been called to join the king at her place tomorrow. But all this loses its meaning every time I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Yeah. Okay, so that was a lot to cover, and we will see tomorrow how this is all going to turn out, just in case you've never seen it or heard it. You guys be blessed today, and I hope that when we finish Esther tomorrow, you'll begin to understand how the Lord works, how we need to let him work, how we need to trust him, and how he uses significant and insignificant things to move his agenda forward. Have a great day, guys. See you tomorrow. God bless.